Change is uncomfortable. It's healthy for us to address issues and be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
And you know, how long has it been celebrated for?
Since 1994, all states celebrated it on the same date.
Like, I've disowned cousins older than that.
There are so many people suffering in this country. What is there to celebrate?
We should give attention to that, but I'm just saying changing the date is not going to change the suffering. It's not going to put food on the table.
Changing the date isn't going to make food magically appear on someone's dinner table, but it will be a huge step towards that outcome. Hi, everybody. Hey, how are we?
Australia Day, Day of Mourning, Invasion Day, Survival Day. Whatever you call January 26, it's a conversation that sparks debate each year. So, what's the history of the date? For more than 65,000 years, First Nations people have lived on and cared for the land now known as Australia. On January 26, 1788, the First Fleet landed at Sydney Cove. Captain Arthur Phillip raised the Union Jack, establishing the penal colony of New South Wales. This date would go on to mean different things for our country: a triumph for the Crown, and for First Nations people, the beginning of colonisation. The first celebrations of this date were in New South Wales, to mark the anniversary of the First Fleet landing on January 26. But it wasn't until 1915 when Australia Day was held nationally to raise money and stir up national pride for World War I on July 30. The date hasn't been a celebration for all Australians though. Protests began in 1938 when Aboriginal activists gathered in Sydney calling for equal rights, declaring January 26 a day of mourning. These early protests laid the foundations for today's Invasion and Survival Day rallies. In 1946, all states marked January 26 as a national day, but the public holiday was often moved to coincide with the long weekend. Then, 1988 marked the bicentenary celebrations. First Nations people from across the country held protests in Sydney alongside the celebrations. 1994 marked the year when all states and territories made January 26 a public holiday, ending the tradition of taking the nearest Monday or Friday off for a summer long weekend. The last decade has seen many councils, businesses and organisations distance themselves from celebrating on the day. This move has received both support and backlash as a result. For some, Australia Day is a chance to celebrate the country's achievements, instilling a sense of national pride, while some First Nations people continue to protest and hold Invasion and Survival Day events. So as the debate around January 26 grows louder, should we find a new date for Australia Day, abolish it altogether, or keep it as it is?
What's our thoughts on Australia Day? Do we keep, do we change the date, or do we abolish it altogether?
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm Kiki Morris. My stance on Australia Day is to change the date.
My name is BB Oliver. My stance on the 26th of January is we need to abolish the date.
My name's Tyson Lindsay. My stance is the day should stay as is. Keep the date.
My name is Kirby Bentley. Australia Day, or Jan 26, I think it needs to be changed.
My name is Gayala Bales. I want to abolish Australia Day.
I'm Anthony Dillon. My stance on Australia Day, leave the name, leave the date.
I'm Andy Saunders. My stance on Jan 26, I think we need to change the date. It affects my elders, and I have the utmost respect for my elders. All of our elders went through atrocities that we couldn't imagine for us to walk on the land we walk on and do what we do on the land we do it on. My grandfather, you know, if it upsets him that Australia Day is on the 26th of January and he wants it changed, then I would want it changed too, out of respect for my elders. I love them. What gets under my skin is that people have an ownership on something that is, well, it's not that old. What happened to my people is way older.
I think that Australia is such a wonderful country and it's offered a safe space for so many people to live and bring up their families. So I think for those people, we deserve to celebrate what Australia means to all of us, but definitely the date needs to be changed because we need to be sensitive to our ancestors and our history as well.
I'm definitely for keep the date. Australia Day can be a ground for, commonality for all of us. all ethnic backgrounds to come together and celebrate a day, regardless of our history. And
I do really respect that opinion, but I think that there's going to be too many people that don't see it like that.
Many Aboriginal people are fine on that day. So, fine, if you want to say you're upset by that day, you are basically saying that day or what we do on that day has more power over my emotions than what I have over them myself.
I think as long as that date is there and as long as we're having this conversation, there will always be division, always.
I'm all for abolishing the date, personally, because if we're not going to celebrate our culture pre-colonisation, that we come from the oldest continuous survival culture in the world, then what are we actually celebrating? People are still celebrating a day of mourning for our people. I think it's really sad. It is really sad, and it's ignorant.
The 26th of January is always going to represent a sadness, and I'm not going to say loss because it was more of a theft. If we look at the actual true and accurate history of the 26th of January and why that date is being celebrated, it still focuses and is centric to the invasion and the arrival of the boats. And I genuinely believe that abolishing the date is what's necessary, because I don't even think that this country understands what it is, as a whole, what it is that it's celebrating.
I just feel for them, in communities that really struggle, and here we are, debating a day it's gone within a blink, and then them kids are still starving the next day. Them marches, if we put half of our energy that we do in our marches into actually fixing our own community, we'd be all right.
For those who are investing a lot of energy and time into raising awareness, educating, trying to change the date, that's fine to do that, but also invest the same amount of energy in fixing those problems that are happening today for many of the Indigenous Australians.
It's not getting to the primary issue. I think it's a Band-Aid solution for something that needs surgery. I think we need to go deeper. We have to look within ourselves and what we can do better as a people. All come to the table, regardless of your ethnic background, and have that conversation and go, okay, well, where do we want our country to go?
Sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned before that there's the Band-Aid approach. I would view keeping and changing the date both as Band-Aid solutions, as opposed to completely starting anew.
I fully understand, but we have to move in a sustainable way, and we can't keep driving forward and looking in the revision mirror. We need to be worrying about these numbers and closing the gap targets and things that actually matter. We need the impact on the ground. We don't need to be worrying about these days because that don't define us.
So if the date doesn't define us as people, in one hand, that doesn't negate the need for us to keep having these conversations and trying to get different outcomes. In the other hand, why should we then accept the date as a point of celebration if it doesn't define us? Why should we settle for that?
I'm more concerned for those, if we talk about history and all that emotive stuff, it's not going to put a kid in school, it's not going to put food on the table for those Indigenous kids in remote communities and the suburbs, some suburbs, who need it.
If we remove changing the date, abolish it, all of that, what does that look like? Is that just the facts of our history is what it is, and we need to be educated around it holistically as a nation? Because I feel like if we aren't educated enough, we don't know the facts of our history and the trauma that it has caused for generations and still ongoing, then how do we move forward? How do we accept that?
I would ask, why are there so many Aboriginal people who have escaped this trauma? They're doing well, they're not upset by Australia Day. I'm going to make a radical suggestion. Perhaps we're not victims of the past, but only ever victims of our view of the past. A bit like those people who have thought they were victims of the Flora and Fauna Act that only ever existed in their imagination. Talk about history all you want. I'm happy to hear about history, but changing the date isn't going to undo history.
But brother,
we can have combinations.
I
We
know
can have
exactly what you're
conversations.
saying, but everyone takes trauma in a different way. Just because I'm carrying it easy doesn't mean it's not heavy. Some people can move forward, get through life like it looks like it's not affecting them, but we don't know that with everyone. But I know exactly what you're saying. This date shouldn't stop us moving forward. But every time someone reports on Australia Day, it's let's just move forward. We're all the same. Forget about what happened. It's like rubbing it in. Get over it. No, we can't get over it.
There will always be a day of division until we change it.
I really wish that as a community, we can come to a better day that we can celebrate together.
Do we think Australia is worth even celebrating at all then?
I think it's a great country. And that's what I do on Australia Day. In fact, I do not know one person who is celebrating theft or genocide or any of that on that day. They're the ones I know, including many Aboriginal people. They're just having a great day. But again, if you want to make it a burden for yourself, go for it. The day doesn't mean we give it the meaning.
I think what's so remarkable is that we have survived the act of genocide, and that's something to be proud of, that we have continued our culture. But I think the narrative of celebrating the 26th of Jan for a lot of non-Indigenous people is the fact that they are still in denial of the true history of this country.
Well, tell them then. Tell them.
And we do. And we will tell them, and we continue to tell them, because I don't think a lot of people even know what happened pre-colonisation. I don't even think people understand Aboriginal people were the first inventors. We were the first horticulturists. We were the first astronomers. And not many people know that. If we were to change that and implement it into the schooling system, imagine how proud non-Indigenous children would feel about all of our cultures.
Yeah.
We could embrace it together.
Yeah.
But that's not happening.
Absolutely.
So what is there really to celebrate then? For me personally, I don't call myself Australian. It doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't feel comfortable for me to identify as Australian, because First Nations people are before Australia.
Exactly. And what I find remarkable is that you don't know anyone who celebrates theft and invasion.
No, I don't, no.
Every single year in Naarm, in Melbourne, you walk down the streets on the 26th of January and you encounter groups and hordes of people who have their Aussie flag tattoos, their double plugger thongs, everything, the board shorts, the towels, the capes, the flags, basically saying, down with the blackfellas, F the blackfellas, white power all the way. I am proud to call myself a blackfella. I was a black person before I was ever given the label or notion of being an Australian person. If you don't see people celebrating personally theft and invasion, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And when we march, we see that through our very own eyes. We see
That's
white
right.
fellas coming out and taking to our marches, bringing their white Australian flags and calling us very discriminatory, racist comments.
Yeah, but I wonder if it's they're making those comments because of T-shirts like that. I mean, if you show everything there on that T-shirt, I'm not endorsing those idiots with the flags and that sort of thing, but who cares what they think? They're a small number, and if they want to do that, that's fine. It's not going to dampen my parade.
But the bottom line there is that there are Australians who are proud of them.
There are Australians who oppose Aboriginal people. I don't know if they're celebrating genocide and that. You can give it that meaning if you want.
It's not up to me to give it that meaning.
Sure, but
it's
I mean,
up
you
to
were
the
saying
people who are celebrating
A
that.
couple of people were saying that they are celebrating genocide.
That's right.
Yeah, I doubt that's the case, but
Well, but you're then speaking on their behalf.
I'm just guessing the way you are.
I'm not guessing, I'm witnessing firsthand what these people are saying.
Yeah, what
And
do they say?
if you want the verbatim account of what they say, it's fuck the black people.
Yeah, and I wonder
Kill
if
the black people.
Sure, and that's not a nice thing to say. But I
Correct.
wonder
So
if
then
it's-
that's not my assumption that that's what they're saying.
Sure,
When that's explicitly what they're saying.
Yeah, but that's not exactly the same as celebrating genocide. They could be responding to, the false messages on that T-shirt about Black Lives
So
Matter.
then
and
what
that
they're
sort of
promoting
thing.
is the message of white supremacy, that white matters more than black.
No.
Down with the black fellas. It's all about the Australian flag.
No.
It's all in the same boat.
Sometimes shirts like this and banners like this are our only defence. All of these sayings on your shirt are valid as far as I'm concerned. I'm definitely proud to be a Biripi man because that is my country. There are many, many different countries on this continent. And then, as blackfellas, we're connected as First Nations people. What's not valid is people doing that. It's dangerous.
Absolutely. And so I don't celebrate Australia. I don't think it's worth celebrating because I refuse to settle. I refuse to say, all right, it's not perfect, but it'll do. Bullshit. It can be better and it needs to be better.
100%.
But you asked if it's a country worth celebrating. I think so. I think there's a lot of beauty in this country. I'd rather do it on another day. And I would like there to be a dedicated space for Indigenous people on that day so that people get the truth, the beauty and the connection to our people.
I have celebrated, in the past and will continue to celebrate the day, celebrating a beautiful country that we do have.
I love Australia. I'm a proud Indigenous Australian, and I believe that we should celebrate as a country on a day that is more sensitive to my people.
Will changing the date or abolishing the date do anything?
It shows inclusivity. It shows that we've been listened to. It shows validation. All of those words are all positive words, and they can only lead to positivity. Not doing anything and letting it keep going the way it's going will not change anything, but it'll keep it divisive and negative.
There will be no constructive change in the health and wellbeing of Aboriginal Australians. But give it a go.
I think changing the date will create a shift. Change is uncomfortable. And when you're comfortable, things just plateau. And I think that it's healthy for us to address issues in a healthy way, putting it on the table and let's filter it out and be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
I think mob have been uncomfortable in this country for way too long to settle for crumbs. I think if we continue to sit here and not do anything at all and just let things just go how it is, it almost does nothing for our mob. If we were to abolish it or change it, it will show future generations that we
did
actually are
something,
doing
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
We are listening to different opinions of each other and respecting each other.
I think it would definitely be symbolic. It would be a line in the sand that we were able to cross together. And I think that giving every Australian the right knowledge about what it truly means and what exactly happened and the history behind what the date is, maybe if we were to give them that education, they might then say, now I know this, how could I possibly celebrate it? Because I know if it was the other way around, they wouldn't want us celebrating it if it happened to their people.
Yeah.
The thing that really gets under my skin is, the racial point, and now it's just, blaming the non-Indigenous people, which I think is not sustainable. I just don't think it's going to change anything, though. I really don't. It's worth, working on it together and look at other alternatives to better the country.
I get what you're saying because I want us to look at the big picture. Let's feed the mouths of the ones that aren't being fed. Let's make sure that they're nurtured and cared for and educated and they're empowered in that same space. But ignorance is just so sound in this country. Like, if we're not putting it in the school curriculum, in our universities, having those conversations at the table, how do we create that shift to get on the same page and celebrate Australia for what it is and what it should be?
For those who do celebrate the 26th of January, what would they lose? If the answer is a public holiday and a day off work and a reason to go hang with your mates, then you aren't celebrating anything?
Because a lot of people just want their public holiday. Of course they don't want to change the date, they love that day off.
Look, I'm always prepared to give it a go. And same thing I said about the apology. I said, look, if it changes things, I will be the very first to say I was wrong and it's been good. So I would give it a go, but I do not believe it will change anything. My reasons for keeping 26th of January as Australia Day is because I have not heard anyone present a good argument as to why it should be changed. And so until a good reason is given as to why it should be changed, let's leave it as Australia Day.
I think what's so wrong with January 26 is when they came here and put their flag on our country and claimed it terra nullius, they're celebrating a lie. This is stolen country. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing, is that we are still on stolen country. We didn't cede our sovereignty with nobody. So why do we celebrate?
We just got bigger fish to fry than sitting here worrying about a date. That's, coming from an emotional trigger point, because changing the date doesn't help, those people that's starving and got no electricity and all these types of things.
Again, it's so important that we're doing this, but I'm worried if we don't do something about Jan 26, I'm letting down my ancestors. I'm letting down my elders who have paved the way, just like women have done for me as a woman in this country. And I relate it to that because we're still in this situation as women. That's the only way that I can sort of compare it.
If we called it Invasion Day, even if we just changed the name to Invasion Day, I'd feel more vindicated than having it called Australia Day.
I'm still happy to celebrate on 26th of January.
That's great,
Call it whatever
but
you
I'm
want.
not, so that's why this conversation's important.
But what do you celebrate? What do
That
you
Australia's
celebrate?
a great country. That Australia's a great country. And again, my concern is if we change the date, or we talk about what have they got to lose, well, if we change the date, you're giving that message that your emotions are controlled by a date. And that's very disempowering.
Is there something wrong with allowing emotions to come in to a decision-making process for you, though?
No.
So why do you keep picking up on emotions being a problem?
Because if they're disempowering, I'm so upset because of this and that, that's not helpful.
But that's not what's upsetting. What is upsetting is that for decades, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have been saying, please stop celebrating our country on this date because it's wrong. What's upsetting for people today is that no one's listening and that the majority of this country goes, get over it, we're going to continue celebrating.
Sure.
That's what's upsetting.
Maybe they're making themselves upset because there are many Aboriginal people who just get on with that day as well.
Anthony and Tyson, because they're not emotionally tethered to the day, they're able to talk about other topics like it's nothing. And I mean, I'm happy for them to not be emotionally charged by that, but you can't deny that there is ancestral trauma that drives so many people to be protesting in the street. And if they can so easily overlook it like it's nothing, there's 100,000 other people that can't.
What may be relayed on television as the angry blacks, you know, marching the streets, taking to the streets, being loud, that's, for me, that's such an empowering move for us. That creates changes. And you can't say that it doesn't because I've seen it from my very own elders. And if we just stop that all of a sudden, then what is that teaching our young fellas? And I think abolishing this altogether is going to create a message of we hear you, we're listening, we are going to create real change.
So the change in the date is real change?
There are so many adversities that people face, whether you're Indigenous or not.
Yeah.
You look at the homeless rate, you look at the state of living, the cost of living in this country, it's ridiculous. There are so many people suffering in this country. What is there to celebrate? When you've got people that aren't as privileged as ourselves.
We should give attention to that, but I'm just saying changing the date is not going to change the suffering. It's not going to put food on the table.
I agree to disagree.
Yeah. OK, well, if it puts food on the table, I will change it.
Changing the date isn't going to make food magically appear on someone's dinner table, but it will be a huge step towards that outcome. If we change the date or abolish the date, well, far out. At least it's one less thing that we have to hear about anymore. That's the worst that can happen. You don't lose anything, but people all around this country will gain so much. And Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, their communities, their families, the generations of people that we all represent will feel so much more lighter and able and safe to walk the streets going, shit, we were actually listened to.
We would like to be heard now, just a little bit. We just want to be heard and taken seriously.
All voices do need to be heard, and becoming the one voice together is, quite important.
And just come from a place of love, come from a place of strength, then I think that's when we can see real change in this country, is just accepting each other.
And how long has it been celebrated for?
Since 1994, all states celebrated it on the same date, but before that it was a different, just like the Queen's birthday is a different time in every state.
So why
Why
such
can't they
an
just
ownership of
Yeah.
it? I've disowned cousins older than that. Why such an ownership of something that has only been going 30-odd years?
I think what we really need to start looking at is what it means for a huge community of people and what the actual history is. Because right now it's just a day at the pub or at the beach or at the cricket, but it has so much more meaning to that for both Indigenous people and Australian people that understand the history.
How will you guys be spending the day?
I'll be definitely celebrating the day on the river, enjoying it with family and friends that, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal, with the elders and the youth. That's how I'll be celebrating my day on that date.
So I'll be taking to the streets with all my mob, celebrating my culture, celebrating survival.
On 26th of January, I will find a club where there's cool drinks, good food, good music, mixed with friends. Yes, I reflect on my elders, but I also reflect on today's people that are doing it tough. What can we be doing for them? But overall, done pretty well to end up in Australia.
My 26th Jan is usually split into two parts. The morning is about acknowledging and honouring that invasion and what it did. And then in the afternoon, we head down to the Survival Day concert and really get together with all of the mob, knowing that you're with your cousins and elders and all of the blackfellas. Exactly, you feel so safe, you feel so important. It's a dedicated space for you, but then it also feels really good to look around and see all of the allies there as well, you know, all the non-Indigenous mob coming out to celebrate our survival.
I normally stay neutral. I would just go to work. But I think I'm going to go down to that and just be present with people and mob and feel safe. After our conversations today, I'm going to shift that because I'm so proud to be a Black Australian woman here.
Deadly. How will you be spending the day, Kiki?
I'll be spending the day off social media because I just find it too frustrating for me, and I like to spend it introspectively thinking about, you know, what my ancestors would have gone through, not just on the day specifically, but through the course of the last several hundred years.
I really like that idea of avoiding social media.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah,
If you're a reactive person like me, and I get in about 15 online fights, I end up with a block list this long, like, damn you.
Never read the comments.
So I like to spend it thinking about, you know, how far I've come and all the people along the way that have got me to who I am and where I am now. So.
I'll go deep into social media.
Okay.
And I will comment and reply to every message. I'll be in at least 100 fights. No, I'll just, I usually use the day as a reflection on my elders, ring family and say hello and just be connected. Yeah.
I am so proud to be sitting here with you all. I feel empowered and I love our differences of opinion. So thank you for embracing each other.
Deadly.
Thank you.
Thank you, mob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm grateful that we live in a country like Australia where we can voice opposing opinions, and so I'm grateful for a forum like this where you've got people against, for and in the middle, so it's good to be able to talk about it respectfully.
These discussions are so worth having. It's invaluable because we don't all think alike.
The next step would be that families and mobs all across Australia are having these same yarns at their tables.
I think at the end of the day, we all should respect each other from where we come from and our different experiences and opinions, whether we disagree or agree with each other.
I have not changed my stance from anything I've heard today.
My stance is still the same. I think we need to change the date.
There just wasn't enough foundation there for me to, you know, change my mind.
I still think we need to change the date, but I would think more deeply about why.
If someone could provide a persuasive argument that it will somehow improve the lives of Aboriginal people, I would seriously consider changing the date.
I still think that we should abolish this date. We call this Invasion Day, we call this Survival Day. There are a lot of adversities that First Nations people go through still because of the impacts of colonialism. Then I think there is no way that we can celebrate just yet.
I could definitely lean towards abolishing the date because it's only been around since 1994 where we've all celebrated on the same day. So there's no reason why something that is so young needs to be ingrained for the rest of our lives.
There will be a change, whether it's to the date or whether it's to mindset.
No matter what we're choosing to do on Australia Day, on the 26th of January, just make sure you all stay safe, stay deadly.
And stay black.
That's it.
As black as you can. True God.
Bring it in, Uncle.
Don't.
Lovely.